This podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp, my friends, and Genius Brain listeners. Do I have a treat for you? Because BetterHelp is something that I've been using for a very long time. And if you've listened to this podcast, you've heard me talk about mental health. I've even brought a therapist along on one episode to talk about mental health. So you know I really am about that life. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched up with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/genius today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/genius.
Like,
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's so crazy, right? Like, we're like the biggest population in the world, right? And like, obviously, you know, not in the United States, but like, it's just interesting. Like, we have our own unique story too. Mm-hmm. You know, like we understand obviously the hardships of being like a minority in the sense of like, you know.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Genius Brain podcast. If you guys are a first-time listener, well, you're in for a fucking doozy because this episode doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Hey, we have my buddy Robin here today. Now, on this podcast, usually you guys see a lot of people that you might have seen on online in space and whatever, but the other 30% of the time, I bring on people you don't fucking know. And these are people that just happen to be in my life. You guys never knew who Ed was. You didn't know who the other Ed was. You didn't know who Nick or Pat were. But that's how my podcast rolls. If I don't like you, you're not on this fucking podcast. Period. End of fucking story. And now we have Robin, man. And there is so much to unpack because I met Robin. It was at Dan's wedding, actually. I was drunk as fuck, though.
Okay, because the only thing I remember from the wedding was the venue. And then it was also because that's where I was like, that's where I'm going to live next.
Oh, so you weren't living at Lacey at the time?
No. So I was like, I like this.
Oh.
I want this.
So
yeah.
If you guys want to know what wedding I'm talking about, if you listen to this podcast, Ed talked about this time that he had to give a best man speech to his best friend, Dan. And this is where Ed was just rambling on fucking nonstop.
Oh, yeah.
And at the same wedding, the DJ/MC was fucking coming down from a coke high. So he was sweating through his fucking tuxedo. Do you remember that?
Well, so that's the thing, right? I didn't get the behind the scenes. I was just there. And most of the time, I was just looking at the place saying, this is where I want to do my supper clubs.
So check this shit out. So at the wedding, they hired this fucking like Armenian DJ from Facebook.
Okay.
And this guy comes sweating through his whole tuxedo. I'm talking about the fucking 80s ruffle tuxedo, right?
Uh-huh.
And you look at him, his pupils are dilated. He looks at I was like, you are doing coke and you're coming off a high right now. So he was crashing hard.
Yeah.
And so the dude was grabbing the mic, just mumbling. And so, you know, our mutual friend Clara, she was like crying or like tearing up. I was like, all right, like, cause I've done weddings, right? And I didn't want to do it at this fucking wedding, but I was like, okay, let me just pull this out of my ass, grab the mic, and I just emceed the rest of the wedding. And so he was high as fuck. And that's when Ed came up and he started giving his speech, which went on too long. So I grabbed the mic away from him.
Uh-huh.
And then I kind of roasted him a little bit. He was a little upset. But this is a different Ed than the one now. Back in the day, Ed couldn't take a joke very well. But I had no other choice. I had to roast the guy because it was so awkward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do remember. Wait, was that when Ed was doing the best man speech?
That was when Ed was doing the best man speech.
Okay, because I remember a part of that was there was a point where, and I think I've done this before, or somebody did it to me at some point in my life, but when Ed was talking, you know, he was a bit nervous. And then I think I started holding up I said cheers. I think I said cheers.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Whatever the case was, I feel bad to that day. I always apologize to Ed whenever I think about it.
Oh, no. That was a very good move you made because if not, it would have gone a really dark rabbit hole. But it was like, so Ed was so fucking nervous.
Yeah.
He drank a shit ton of like whiskey.
Yeah.
He got drunk as fuck. But that backfired because he was too drunk up there. And then after the speech got cut in half, he took Dan to a corner and finished the rest of his speech to him in a corner. Fucking Ed, dude.
And the cool part about that is you guys had your own crew. And, you know, I was more on the bride side, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had met Dan that night.
Mm-hmm.
And then also after, I think Dan had come up to me, and then that's how he kind of introduced himself about the speech. And then when I did the clapping or whatever, but you know, it was earlier when you were talking. So I'm on THC right now, so I'm definitely high. There was a moment in time, like leading up to this, right? This is my first time ever being on a podcast. So like, you know, I'm not a nervous guy.
Mm-hmm.
But then also like, you know, like I'm also not like a camera guy, like, you know, in the sense of like, you know, I've been in front of the camera and stuff, but like actually talking, it's a scary thought to just never be on something and then be on something.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like even Ed, before he came on here, like if you look at Ed's first podcast to now, he's completely different, right? Usually what happens on this podcast, from anybody who's been on this podcast, everybody usually has an agenda. Like on a podcast, you go, oh, this is the subject matter. This is what we're going to talk about. We need to get clicks. I don't give a fuck. Right. And I think like for me, I don't know how I'm still surviving in the podcast space. Because usually people think about clickbait shit. They think about stuff that's really hot. I only bring up stuff that people ask me to talk about. And if it's hot, it's hot. If it's not, it's not. I really don't care.
Got it.
Because, you know, being on this space for so long, like you can't keep chasing this fucking carrot dangling in front of your face forever. It's exhausting. Sometimes you just want to drink wine and talk to a fucking high Robin.
You know what I mean? No, for sure.
So it's just like, it's super casual. And I think like that's what people get shocked about the most. Like even people who are, you know, veterans in this space, they go, oh, like this is a very casual podcast. Like, I don't really care to, you know, exploit you for views or whatever, whatnot.
Sure. We're obviously friends outside of
100%.
your public profile per se.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like celebrity friends. It's like, you know, we don't have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about. There's plenty of other shit we could talk about, you know?
Good.
But like this podcast actually happened. Well, let's just go. So Robin and I only got to really know each other probably in the last like couple of years, right? And it honestly happened because of our love for the UFC, right?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the reasons.
That's one of them. And the other thing is because there's like Robin likes to categorize two things. There's foodies and then there's fat asses. And then Robin and I, guess what category we were in?
Yeah.
Fucking fat asses.
Yeah. Fat ass also includes foodie as part of it. But I guess a foodie can't be a fat ass in a way because it's like like when you're like a desperate dude and you're just gonna it's just
bring that mic a little closer.
Since you don't have like options, you're gonna take whatever you want, you know, or whatever you can get, right? Like if you're a fatty, if you have something amazing, you're gonna know it's amazing too. But because you're gonna not like have any like frame of like standard, you just go, I'm gonna put that shit in my mouth.
Yeah.
There's still some roots of how you grow. At least for me, I grew up like, you know, it's like I've eaten a lot of sushi in my life and I can't keep up with the current, as well as my wallet can't keep up with like, you know, where sushi has gone. But I grew up on that Todai life.
Oh, yeah.
My first time I ever had nigiri was like, you know, like the fish on over the rice and stuff was at Todai. And I was so scared to eat that shit. Like I used bulgogi as, you know, like the, you know, the Korean marinated ribeye. I guess, do I ever have to do translations or should I just say it?
Just do the it helps with people.
All right, word. White people, you guys love it.
Yeah.
Bulgogi.
Bulgogi, you know? Dude.
Yeah,
Bukake.
yeah. So I took fucking bulgogi and I used the bulgogi as a chaser. So like, it was like popping kogi, but there just happened to be some fish. This is how I was mentally preparing myself for this. You know, you're a kid, dude. You get to a certain point where like, you think you have it all like figured out with food. And you're like, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. And if I haven't tried it, I don't want to do it. Right.
Yeah.
But this is where the fatties get separated from the foodies. No, I guess foodies will try something adventurous too. But I was like legitimately scared. So I started eating it. And then I was like, oh shoot, this rice is so sticky and like, whatever the stuff that goes in rice wine vinegar, whatever you do to make sushi rice, right? Yeah. It's not just steamed rice, right? And that texture, again, it was obviously not perfect, but still like any Asian owned place is still gonna make better rice than like a non-Asian place that's going to try to make Asian rice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I used it as a chaser. I ate it and it was like, okay, I could do this. So then that was like me normalizing eating raw fish over a piece of rice.
You know what's so weird? Like as a kid, so Korean people have this dish. It's called hedeopbap, right?
Yeah.
So that's like raw fish with gochujang, like chamgiram, vegetables, and rice. Hot rice, cold fish, raw. I used to hate that shit when I was a kid. I fucking hated that.
Was it because it was cold or was it like a bunch of other reasons?
It's just the raw fish idea. It turned me off. I didn't fucking like it. And then I don't know what it is, but one day I'm like, this is pretty fucking good. It just happened overnight. And my mom used to know. She was like, you used to never eat this. What made you like it? I was like, to be honest with you, I don't know. But something about this is fucking working. And then from that, I transitioned it into eating sushi. So like sometimes when we see people who they don't like sushi, I get it. I 100% get it. Like, and people are so apologetic about it now. They go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't like." It's like, "What you sorry for, bro?" Like,
you just want to say you're a fucking bitch ass, all right? I get it, fucking Nate Diaz 209 shit, It's fucking dude. I didn't go like this. I did inverted. I did like a fucking. Other way. I'm not implying that Nate's like like homo. I always talk about homo erectus. He's fucking from that era sometimes.
He's a Cro-Magnon. But like food is such a weird thing because like, so if you guys don't know, like years ago I did this video where I showed you guys this thing called Little Meats LA. And Little Meats LA was actually, it was Robin's thing. And you might have seen Robin in the video. I did a private dinner thing a couple of times at Robin's place, and it was at that place called Lacey, which is the first time that we met. So Little Meats was super fun, right? And honestly, for me, like it reminded me of a space where, sometimes when chefs cook, right, and if they're line cooks, the creativity part's not a part of it. They're a part of a working machine. And then you got to see some of these chefs just kind of flex their like creativity muscles without having to open up a restaurant. And they're allowed to do this where you could create a story with food and everything else. And I fucking love that shit. And at this time, I was a fatty, but nowhere near like a foodie. Like I didn't really know anything about food. I just, whatever put in my mouth and gave me diarrhea, I ate that shit. And so when I started coming over to Lacey and I was like talking to like chefs and I was like, oh, I know that's how that was made. Oh, this is kind of interesting. And then kind of really sparked this idea of like, oh, okay, I think I kind of like food a little more than the average person, right?
Weird.
And then that's what kind of Little Meats did. And that's what I really liked about it. So I started throwing these I decided to do this like private dinner event thing with Robin in conjunction with Little Meats. And so there was this guy, this fucking loser.
Well, okay. To preface that, and also like as a to be continued too, but there were definitely more than one losers that came through, but there was fire that came through too. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. But there's
never 100% success rate in everything, right?
But, for sure.
He kind of reminded me of the modern day social media food influencer that happened to be in touch with the kitchen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And for sure. Just on that note too, why it was so interesting because at the time, nobody was really using Instagram to like promote a business at the time. It was like there was the snobbyism of that kind of, filters and all of that, right? And then it turned into what it is now, obviously. But at some point in that history of it all, it was like, I wonder what it would be like to cook for strangers. Like it's one thing to cook for friends and friends, but then it's like, wonder what it's like to cook for strangers, right? And it's kind of an interesting thought, right? Because it's very truthful in a way too, whereas if it's whack, no one's going to show up, right?
Oh, 100%.
Right? And then if it's pretty cool, then people are going to show up and then, when it was time to start cooking for strangers, it was always like we were thinking about like, well, it was obviously my idea, but like quickly, like people got real excited and then they decided to kind of join in. Holy crap. This whole time I was so high, I was fucking looking at you in a metaverse and now I'm looking straight at you, Dave. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so at Little Meats, when I first started, it was like, I was so curious, like, what is it like to be able to like serve strangers? And like, strangers are going to be honest. They're going to want to know like if they like it or not, right? But like, cooking for strangers is like weird, right? Because, when we have like our like potlucks and our things, right? It's always just like it happens naturally. We're all like kind of a part of it and we start cooking food. Or like we start like, let's say it's a potluck, everybody brings food and like everybody's like sitting and enjoying it. But because we already have a relationship with each other, it's a natural progress, right?
Yeah.
But then to have dinner with somebody who is fucking, you don't know them. So what are you going to do if you don't know a person? Like you come, it's like this weird kind of nervous energy. And like at the time I wanted to use Instagram as like an advertising way, right? To like get people to like know what's going on with it. But for me, the most important part was like the actual experience itself. That was the longest fucking explanation for just one fucking sentence of information. Thank God we have a little bit more time to talk about my bullshit. But basically, that's what I wanted to say.
No, but like that's what Little Meats was, right? Yeah. I think like there was this huge like there's like a disconnect with the consumer and the person who's creating the food, like when it comes to like modern food right now, right? Yeah. And even to the point now where, everybody is just looking for content and you don't even know if they really like or dislike the food.
Yeah.
And even when they say they dislike it, I'm not even sure if they dislike it anymore. Like, I don't know what the truth is, right? And I could always say this by, like, for example, like, with my wife, whenever she cooks something, right, I ask her, where did you get that recipe? She goes, I saw it on TikTok. I was like, cool, don't feed me it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Without fail, every time she fed me a TikTok video of food, trash. They don't care. There's no R&D process to this. Sure. It's just, this is a hot item. Let me just cook it so it looks good on video. And let me show you, I'm not sure if it tastes really good.
Yeah.
And that's what happens all the time. Well, like what Little Meats did really well, it connected the chef with the food and you got to actually talk to the chef because the chef was serving you.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it really was omakase.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's no like hiding behind a waiter or server of like 100 people. This is like 20 people in a room. The chef is telling you, this is how I made this. This is the background story.
For sure.
Do you like this? Yes or no?
Yep.
Now look me in the fucking eye when you say it too. You know?
No, yeah. And
then the cool thing about that too, and this is like for all people who do Yelp, right? Everybody's a fucking expert in food when none of you have fucking picked up a pan in your life. I don't want to hear that shit. But you could sit there and the chef could be like, okay, this is how I developed this dish. Yeah. And what it would do was give a better experience to us.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's what was missing a lot. And, also too with like, with the way American dining is, it's here's your dish. Cool. Make sure, can you take this off, do this, modify that? There is no, this is how the chef intended it.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
Little Meats was different.
Yeah.
It was like, you're here for a food experience?
Yeah. I'm
not going to change this part of the film. The film is shot.
Yeah.
The movie's done.
For sure.
Beginning, middle, and end, it's done. We're not taking out a scene because you don't like it.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit and watch the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what you did really well.
Yeah.
Obviously, like there was like I forgot what the fuck I ate. But if you guys know another backstory, my soft serve where I met this piece of fucking shit, I actually met him at Little Meats. And mind you, food-wise, the guy was good.
Yeah, he definitely had his moments for sure.
Yeah, but he's a piece of fucking shit. And if I ever see you out in the middle of the fucking streets, I'm gutting you like a fucking fish. Just know that. By the way, he started up a YouTube channel. I saw it on my Facebook. I have half a mind to fucking send everybody there to fuck you up. But inshallah, brother.
It's, everybody kind of has like a good intention. And I also believe that they have good intentions, right? And then it quickly goes south the moment that like money gets involved and then
ego.
Yeah, ego and then practicality and then, just also thinking big picture. He definitely lacked that.
His ego was so fucking big for no fucking reason. Like it was kind of like for me.
Every chef has to for sure have a bit of it. Yeah, for sure.
And for me, like he was a really good life lesson for me, right? Because for me, I think I chased a lot of art, right?
Yeah.
But when you're trying to create a business, there has to be a good medium between both, right? Because you're still trying to sell a product.
Yeah.
But you just don't have to sell your soul for it per se. This motherfucker didn't understand any of that shit.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest signs, and I remember the first time I ever walked in and I was like, hey, this is what's going to happen. In the first month that I'm with your business, I'm going to see what's going on with this. And I'm going to market it. I'm going to rework your branding. And then we're going to shift this, right? did a great job on it.
Mhm.
I saw this fool serve a customer. Customer comes up. They go, hey, what do you have? He goes, you don't see the sign, you can't read? I was like, what the fuck? How dare you talk to somebody? And I took him aside. I was like, is this how you talk to people?
Sure.
He goes, what? The sign's right there. It doesn't fucking matter. They're a paying customer. They didn't come here to fucking hear your lip.
He was definitely admitted, though. He definitely was somebody who would admit, though, that he's a piece of shit around people.
100%.
You know what I mean?
You
At
could
least
be
he acknowledged that. You know what I mean?
like being a piece of shit by yourself in your room in front of your friends is different than when somebody who has invested. I didn't invest. I had sweat equity, right? Pending on my performance.
Got it.
So just to put it in perspective, right? That fucking place was making $50 a week on average.
Yeah,
Before
that's crazy.
I redid everything, the branding,
I remember you
right?
telling me that.
And then went from $50 a fucking week. So starting from like September all the way to December, I think they grossed like $200K.
Yeah.
So I earned my fucking right to that company.
Sure, of course,
you know?
of course.
So I did that. This
Yeah.
guy squanders everything.
Yeah.
You know, like comes to, did I ever tell you this shit? So
Yeah.
this guy walks up and we're at a meeting and this is the first month since I rebranded. It's fucking packed there.
Yeah.
He goes
I remember every time I would go to Aqua Grill, I'd always see the spot. It was always packed.
this fool fucking left the Coachella for a whole weekend and left the staff without telling them. And then he comes back and I'm like, where the fuck are you? I'm heated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then nobody knows what to do, how to run the store because he didn't train people properly.
Yeah. No communication.
We're at Hyundai,
Uh-huh.
right? And I'm fucking heated. But I'm calming myself down and I see him walk into the restaurant.
Yeah.
This fool has fucking beads and shit on his neck, fucking sunglasses on.
Oh yeah, like straight from
Coachella.
Yeah, I got
And
you.
I sit there
Yeah.
and I'm like, you fucking out of your mind?
Yeah.
He goes, well, I was like, I thought they could handle it. And I fucking slammed this fucking beer, busted it. I was like, are you fucking out of your mind? And I'm a lot better now at dealing with this.
I got
But
you.
it was the idea that this guy abandoned his staff for a weekend without telling them. And I was like, what in what world did you think this was okay?
For sure.
And then from then on out, you know him, like when somebody confronts him, like on some real shit, he gets hyper avoidant. So he would dodge me 24/7 and he would go
Yeah.
to the other partners to talk to them to talk to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not how I roll. Like, I'll find you, you know?
There's always, I don't know, like I'm assuming it's obviously every people group, but I can only say like maybe around Korean Americans in LA. But like, there always seems like there's a few of them who are just like, I do believe they have good intentions, but then they're just out and out, just frauds in a way. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if fraud's the right word, but something not good. Something in which a lot of lies are involved, a lot of shadiness. I guess maybe that's just somebody who just might have drug habits though too, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Like
that motherfucker
hard
was
drug
on.
habits.
He had crazy drug habits, you know, in his mind and his life. And like for me, like I think because like I got to know him as a friend first, I never got to see him in a business aspect, right?
Yeah.
And I just believed in the product and I believed what he could do. And
Yeah,
mind you,
yeah.
the software was tasty.
Yeah.
There were certain things I disagreed with it
Sure.
because obviously for me, because when I don't know something, I ask people who do know something.
I mean, he was the type of person where if he knew that everybody loved it, he would destroy it.
Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And not in an unpredictable way, but in such a predictable way that it's like, then are you really an artist? I know
Mm.
that's an abstract way of thinking, but that's kind of the way that I looked at that. That's like in terms of like that person's like self idea of like what an artist is and how he should live that out, right?
Yeah,
and then like
yeah.
maybe in his idea, as crazy as it sounds, it's like people have done that before, but maybe with more pure intentions.
Yeah. And I think like the hard part with working with him was like, one of the things I don't like is dishonesty, right? I don't care about mistakes because
Sure.
everybody fucks up. You know, that's the part about running a business, you know, and things would fuck up at the business, right?
Yeah.
And then other people, because they were so trusting of his quote unquote expertise,
Yeah.
they would never ask him questions. But then for
course.
me, you know, I'm like,
Speaking confidently gets you a long way in life.
yes.
Especially around other Asian Americans.
Yes. And he would be like, oh, I'm the chef person. I ran a crew of this. I know everything. And they would just trust everything he says.
Sure.
Problem with me is like, I'm 10% of you. I research a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so when things wouldn't work, just one quick little Google search.
Sure.
And I'm like, hey, how come this and this isn't working? Why didn't you replace this? He goes, we don't need that. I'm like, no. It's not working. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, cool. Like for example, like we had this nitro cold brew thing, right? And it wasn't putting nitro into the fucking cold brew. So it didn't have the foam and the froth, which is why people like nitro cold brew.
Yeah, for sure.
And then he goes, that's how it's supposed to be. And I was
again, let's say the checklist of items of, okay, like, I don't know. I'm not in the food world like how my friends who are in the food world are in the food world. But you know that one dude, that sexy dude with like the Jesus hair.
Yeah.
He's like has a cigarette in his mouth, right? Whoever that motherfucker is, I bet you he might have even had this checklist and he might have been the first guy. I don't know. I'm just making this shit up, but like doing something that's on that list of like things that a good chef artiste or a legend is going to do. You know what I mean? That's another thing on that list.
He's like, that guy, you know, and I think too, I was a little naive in the sense of, I always want to think the best of your friends. You know what I mean?
Okay. But this is where we had, a relationship, but it wasn't as close enough where you would have felt comfortable saying to me, because
I didn't really know you like that at the
exactly.
time. Yeah,
And then also like, you know, for me too, is like, you think, oh, it's like those types, like that type of person, right? The point of why he was at Little Meats was so that he could move on to something bigger. Of course, there was a time where I was always trying to find like a partner or people who were like you know? And I think that's where his mentality was trying to go. But the goal is always to get them to move to the next steps in life, right? Because who am I to like, you know, give them advice on whatever in whatever industry, right? Restaurant industry stuff. But shit, what was I talking about with my close friends, restaurant friends being hardcore? Oh yeah, the checklist and all of that stuff. No, wait. We were talking about us talking about like, you know, I've said this to you before. I'm like, damn, dude, I wish you fucking talked to me first.
I know.
You know? But again, we didn't have that type of relationship. I get it. But even for me, when people who knew who he was knew me, they went out on a limb, not just like one or two people, like maybe 3-4 people, said, hey, I just want to let you know, like I've seen you've been hanging around like on social media, right? So before I had brought him in to kind of do what we were going to do, what we were doing at Little Meats was I said, hey, this isn't going to be something where I'm not going to let you do something with me and Little Meats. Like, I'm all about giving people chances in life. But I do want to know, though, I do want to let you know, though, that doesn't mean I'm going to go into this naively giving you 100% trust on everything.
Yeah.
So I kept it pretty simple. I said, not even $1, not even a reimbursement do I want you doing anything money related, because the things that I had heard were money and responsibility related things. So
yes.
I had this conversation from day one. This is probably why I was actually one of the only people maybe who's worked with him. And I say worked because it's all volunteer. It was like literally just a passion project, right?
Yes.
I wanted him to know what I know about him, but I wanted to give him a chance. So
just within
I also
boundaries.
didn't want to give him, any opportunity to. But then fast forward though, he did cross those boundaries with other people.
Yeah.
Who were part of the Little Meats project.
Yeah.
So
see, that's the thing too. Like the people that I was partnered with, right? They gave him full reign on everything.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest tell signs.
Confidently gets you far.
Yes. One of the biggest tell signs that I had, even before the other stuff where he was already avoiding me, he would be like, "Oh, I accidentally used the credit card for my private dinners from our soft serve spot."
Yeah. There was a couple instances where somehow, some way, because we still had open accounts with certain vendors, like food vendors, after gone, there was a time where
suddenly
there was a credit card charge, and I was like, huh. And then when I confronted him about it, he was like, oh, shoot, like I thought it was going on a different card or whatever, this and that. So it is what it is. Obviously, I got the charge back, whatever. But, I'm sure he still got his inventory, though.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. And then, he was like, oh, I accidentally. I was like, no, you don't accidentally do shit like that. You know what I mean? And, for me growing up, like there's a few things that you just never do, right? Especially to friends. You don't fuck my girl. You don't steal money from me. Those are death sentences. You know what I mean? Like I've literally seen people get their teeth knocked out for that shit. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm an adult, right? And I don't do these things. I'm also not a thug. But I was going to fuck him up. But then, as an adult, we're like, we're running a business. I have a future ahead of me. And I think
it's also reputation too.
It's reputation, And so, these things got really, and then I think what happened was because, I have a reputation of being just a little, very hyper honest. And so, I'm talking to the other partners. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, you need to set boundaries and figure this stuff out. Oh, no. Like, I got really upset with them because they started protecting him from me and they started lying to me. And I was like, now you guys are all fucked.
So again, how I was saying in different pockets of this, I'm just going to say Asian American for Asian American sake, is these pockets of these Asian American circles, even like, let's say church crowds or whatever, there's always this person. Like, everybody knows. It's actually, in my opinion, I think it's actually very difficult to tell the truth in life.
Mm-mm.
Like, I don't know about you, but or I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, when I wake up in the morning, I have to consciously tell myself, don't be a liar. And even sometimes, and we talked about this one time where like, I'm like going to be a liar till the day that I die. I just feel that like I am. But when that happens, I feel terrible. And then I'll go out of my way and actually apologize after the fact and acknowledge what I did was a lie. And then try to basically ask for forgiveness for that particular person, right? Sounds like a Christian mold, right? I'm not Christian, but it's very similar in this idea where I always know that I'm going to lie if I don't think about it. Like my autopilot human self, like it's just fucking freestyle, like Eminem, like blah, blah, blah. It could be like a freestyle lie about something to just convenience me, So I have to think about that all the time. Which when I do, I'm successful and I'm very happy about that, but it still happens to me. So on that note, like I always feel like within the circle of people, there's like a template of these like compulsive lying people who never fess up to what they've done wrong. They always have an excuse.
And look, right? I know what that feels like because I know what it feels like at a younger age, Yeah. And I've talked to you about this where bring the mic a little close. So bring the mic in front of your mouth like this.
Word. Okay, earlier, also my apologies, dude. Earlier, I was so high.
Okay.
I couldn't even focus on like 3 words after what I said.
Well, you're high right now and I'm a little drunk, so it's all good.
Cool. Sorry, guys. I swear, if you powered through up until this point,
but
I think I'm
like,
a little better.
Because like I like that subject of like lying, right?
Yeah.
And I've talked about this a lot where when I was a kid, like my dad used to beat the shit out of me for lying, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about beat the living fuck out of me, right? And because my dad hated lying because he's had a history of people who lied to him in his life.
Yeah.
And because of that, it stuck with him, it scarred him.
Yeah.
So when we would lie as kids, my dad would always be like, look, anything that you do, don't you ever fucking lie to me.
Yeah.
He goes, even if the punishment is me whooping your ass, you should live your life like an honest person.
Yeah.
And be a man about the shit. And don't lie. But I would lie and he would see it in my eyes. And he would beat the fucking shit out of me.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, like one of the things that always stuck with me with him was
Did that ever make you into a better liar?
It didn't. It made me it made me too honest.
Okay. That's okay. Because I can see because somehow it might sometimes go the other way though, right?
Or I couldn't navigate.
Got it.
And so for me, I became like this. Albeit like I learned later on in life that there's a fine line between being honest and being an asshole.
Yeah.
But I didn't know the difference, right? Because I would always have this fear that if I'm lying, that I was going to hell. Because my dad instilled this in me.
Yeah.
So when I would like for example, if somebody came up like, hey, what do you think about this outfit? I'm like, that shit sucks.
Yeah.
And I would just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But I would never think about like the emotional repercussions of the things that you say, whether because it's true or not. And there's sometimes you just don't need to say something at all.
Sure.
I didn't know what that shit was. And so my whole life I was going through this fear of like, if I don't lie, I'm a better person for that. But I would never think about the ripple effect that it would have when sometimes the truth, not everybody's ready for that shit.
Sure, of course.
Right? And just because you tell the truth all the time doesn't mean that you're a good person. Sometimes you're just a fucking asshole. And so,
yeah, it definitely depends on, it's also intention for sure.
Yeah, and for me, like I had to learn how to navigate these things, right? And we talked about this off podcast where there's an awkward situation between a couple who got divorced.
Yeah.
And I have to learn how to play cordial because it affects other people if I'm not.
Yeah.
Is that technically kind of lying? Yeah, I guess. But I have to look at bigger picture things. And I never did that before.
Yeah.
But then it got into a point where when I came on this space, right? When I started becoming a stand-up comedian at the age of 16, like people were telling me like, sometimes you just got to learn how to lie a little better. And I just wasn't very good at it because it felt like my spirit and my soul was being eaten up.
Yeah.
Right. And so I used to get in trouble, not trouble, right? But it was like, there were things that I hated because I would be on like my channel or, my other friend's channel, JK News.
Yeah.
And I'm telling these stories, but I have to change certain aspects of it. So it wouldn't go back to people that I knew.
Yeah.
But I was so bad at fucking lying, I started fumbling over my words because I'm trying to change like 30% of the story on the fly.
Yeah. And in a way, you're going to get, fact check too, because you get a bigger platform.
Exactly. And I know that 30% of this story is a lie, right?
Yeah.
Only because I don't want it to go back to that person.
Yeah.
And because I'm so bad at this shit, I'm like, okay, I guess I shouldn't say this name. Okay, let me change this part of the story because it's too similar to this part and this part.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I just didn't give a fuck anymore. I'm like, this whole shit right here is fucking me up. I'm just gonna say it, and the one thing I'm gonna change is just the name.
Got it.
Because now at least I'll be consistent. Because that was the hardest part, right? And it happened from one conversation.
Yeah.
Where one story that I told on a JK News episode, it went back to that person, their feelings were hurt.
Yeah.
And it made me feel terrible.
This podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp, my friends. If you don't know what BetterHelp is online therapy. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. You want to be better than the person that you were the day before, even if it's just a little bit. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way that we do until we talk through things. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey to self-discovery from wherever you are. Mental health is something that's very important to me. It's something that I'm working on every day. And if I'm focusing on my physical health, I'm focusing on my mental health as well. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/genius today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/genius.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It didn't matter if the whole world didn't know who they were, but they knew.
Yeah.
And then now I just was like, you know what, guys? Fucking deal with it. We're fucking mid-30s. Like, who the fuck cares?
Yeah, and the friends who are going to stay friends with you are going to stay friends with you. And then maybe arguably to a certain degree, the ones who don't want to be friends with you after that, for that reason, that's probably somebody that you don't really care to be friends with either.
Yeah, and sometimes too, on the topic of like being honest, like, when I would tell some of these stories, like some of these people think that you're lying about the stories that you tell because they haven't lived your life. And because they're like, oh, because I didn't do it, there's no way you could have done it. It's like, but that's a logical fallacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that makes absolutely no fucking sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you've experienced is what you've experienced. What I have is what I've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you met me otherwise, there's no way you could deny what I'm saying. This is what happened. If I told the story a million times over and it was the same fucking story, I guess I'm really consistent with this lie over the past 10 years.
Sure.
And so like the honesty route was always easy for me because my dad says that at least even if you fuck up, at least you were honest when you were doing it and you could lie and you could die knowing that shit.
In my group of friends, we have this, these are arbitrary fucking numbers. It's not like real data, but we try to act like we're, data driven and shit.
Yeah.
But like, there's like big talk, which everybody does. Okay. Like maybe almost every guy does big talk. Okay. There's big talk and then there's just flat out lying.
Yeah.
So if I were to put a percentages,
fluff, if you will.
Yeah. Up to 15 to 20% is big talk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know, like, let's say like you were like doing the typical guy talk where it was like, my body count was, 300. But then in actuality, I don't know, let's say it was like 250. I don't know. Is that math good enough? Did that?
Yeah.
Okay. But whatever that, you know, just again, arbitrary numbers, but there's where it's like, yeah, the point is you're still somebody who has a high body count and you're proud of that. Right. But then, whether it's 250 or 300, not a big difference. The point is you are a slut. Okay. Right. Versus if a dude says 300, but then they've only been with, let's say, 30 people, then that's a lie. You know, so that's where that formula to me is like, you know, 75% is a total lie, right? But then I guess the question is like, where's that percentage from you where that starts, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, like, you know, especially in stand-up comedy, like you tell the story that's the truth, but then you kind of make it bigger and more like aggrandized to make it funnier.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like what?
Yeah, big talk.
Big talk. 85% truth, 15%, you know, extra little smuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Sure.
You know, growing up and being around people who are honestly like habitual liars, it always fascinated me because I'm like, I always think in my mind, like, what is the end goal of this? Right? What is the purpose?
Yeah, exactly. What are you trying to intend to do? Or like, what is the laugh rooted in, let's say you're doing comedy, stand-up, and somebody, and the people, the core of why people laughed so hard, that has to be factual. Like, you know, it can't be, you know.
Yeah, 100%. And like when, you know, meeting people who like I've met now, and look, I'm a lot more tactful in the way that I approach people, right? But if somebody like blatantly lies to me, or to the point where it creates like somebody lies to me to the point where it could be damaging in the future, like I have to say something. Like there's no way I'm not going to.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because like I want people around me to be somewhat honest at least.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
And like especially when you
also even like yourself, because you're a public profile in a lot of ways. So it's super important. You're probably around a lot of people, or not you're around, but like if anybody has a chance with you who doesn't know you, they're going to be tempted to be like a yes man to everything. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Versus like, obviously.
That's the thing. Like one of the people, it's so funny you mentioned that. I had a conversation. I was talking to some really good friends of mine. And, you know, I was telling them that one of the type of people that I hate the most are highly agreeable people.
Sure.
And the reason why is because those people are the most dishonest human beings I've ever met in my life.
Okay, so I love where you're going with this, because this is obviously, I mean, we've talked about this off camera, but this is the part where I'm really trying to work hard on in my life.
Oh, and by the way, this is a good segue too, because I forgot that we were going to talk about this. Like, my man's been on Shrooms, baby.
It's true.
Right? And this has been something that I've been relatively curious about, only because one of my buddies too, he's been unpacking a lot of traumatic shit that's going on with his life, the passing of his mom, and a lot of the stuff that happened to his, you know, family life.
Yeah, we're at that age.
And when we're talking about honesty, we're not only just talking about honesty with other people, we're talking about honesty to ourselves. Which is arguably even harder.
Oh yeah,
right?
Of course.
And so one of the things about me is that I think like, you know, I'm always like my worst critic, and I'm also a little too brutal with myself sometimes. So when I hear people go through this thing where I think a majority of people go through this thing where that honest conversation that they have with themselves is very hard. Right?
Of course.
And I feel like a couple of my friends, probably you included as well, is that Shrooms does this thing where a mirror is put in front of your face.
Yeah. And like if let's say like people drink alcohol or do something, it's like, in a way, it's like to get away and not have to think about your life, versus like, again, like I'm not an expert, obviously, as you know. I'm not like, you know, anybody else who talks about psilocybin or whatever, right? But definitely I can say that it makes you focus on your life if you'll allow it to, in a way. And that's where it's like the scary monsters is sometimes is because you have to face the truth.
And it's always easier to avoid things, right? I think anybody who's listening to this podcast right now, I'm right there with you. Like, people ask this a lot about me. I've always openly spoke about this. I suffer from social anxiety like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, my social anxiety is crazy. Like, to the point where I was a kid, I couldn't order food from people.
I got you.
I couldn't walk up to a fucking like Carl's Jr. And order from the fucking register because my social anxiety was crippling.
Yeah.
Well, I got to a point where I was just like, you know what? Like, you got to just fucking do this shit, right? You got to face this stuff.
Yeah.
And from somehow that transitioned to doing stand-up, because it was like, if anything that I was going to do that was going to hold me back from something, I just kind of faced it head on.
Yeah.
Didn't matter what the fuck it was. It was okay, you have social anxiety. Guess what? You're going to try public speaking.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Exactly.
And so that fear is what I think a lot of people try to confront when they do the psychedelics, because all my friends who have done it, and I literally don't mean all, not just like one who just enjoyed the trip but didn't really get anything out of it.
Yeah. But and also you can have like, there's all this like science and data that's like coming out more of the woodwork. The data and science has been there for kind of like for some time to a certain degree, right? But because it was like driven so underground, right? And again, like, I saw a bunch of YouTube, what the fuck do I know, right? But like, where everybody says is like, this part and then the Reagan administration and then whatever this happened, fast forward to just now things are starting to kind of be okay to come out of the woodwork, right?
Yeah.
People who like had done them in their past and, it's been a net positive in their life and stuff, that wouldn't be something that you would put on paper because of the implications of what that might be, right? So that world is changing, right? And so, it's, for me, like, it's weird because going back to kind of like the lying to yourself, if you can't get that part figured out, like, you should never be an influential person on someone's life or how they should live their life.
Does it make you feel like you're a fraud?
Of course, because like, and that's the thing, right? Is like, I've committed my sins. Like, I've done so many terrible things, as like narcissistic, as self-preserving as it's ever been. Like, selfish motherfucker, and that's something that's like so disgusting, but it's also like in my nature to a certain degree, I'm not saying like every single person, but definitely me, it's in my nature. And so having to look at myself constantly and then wanting to be able to be like a net positive to like people or like society, like, Little Meats is a perfect example. The idea of it was so amazing. Hints of Robin Genius as, like thematic to your podcast. These moments of genius where, that's awesome. Like an authentic place where people can express themselves culinarily, but also people can come and people who are passionate about food can enjoy that, right? But I was a terrible person during that time. And when I say that is like, let's say the shadiest I could have ever been in my life, and not like business-wise, relationally. I was such a terrible fucking person, And then I had this like supper club where like it was genuinely people were getting good and amazing things about it. And like, I fucking love those days. Those are awesome, right? And I go through these weird phases in life where like, I'm just curious, and then I'll fucking go start a supper club in front of a bunch of strangers because I want to answer some questions, and because I'm just curious about that, like what's it like to serve a bunch of strangers, Like, it's one thing like when your homies are going to come over and your friends come over and your friends' friends come over because, hey, free food, good food. Who's not going to want to come to that? But that good food, though, is not a requirement. Free food is usually, and people are always going to say, and because it's free, they're going to kind of lie to you and say like, it's good, but like, it's like that fucking, what's that talent show or the small town, any talent show where like the small town, they hear a bunch of people telling them, oh, dude, you're so great. You're so amazing. You hear all these amazing things and then they perform in front of, people who are going to tell them the truth. And it's very painful, right? Same thing like food wise. Like I was like, man, like I love food. I'm not a chef, but I wonder if like I can recreate like maybe what restaurants were originally intended to be, like a place where people like would serve food, but then it wasn't just food, right? It was like, like there was like always like supper club show food, and it was like a whole night, going out, right? I always wondered like, can that kind of hint of that culture come back in that modern world, right? And I'm not like the first person to do it, obviously, but I just wanted to know for myself, could I cook for people, have them also cover their cost for it though, and be happy with all of that time spent with it,
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent, but we were kind of talking initially about lying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you were talking about you felt during this time in your life, you were very selfish. And
yeah, super selfish in that part of my life. So for me, like, but even before that, I guess trying to tie that point, I think earlier, I don't remember exactly what I said, but for me, I find priority in trying to tell the truth, even when I consider lying like staying silent about something, telling that person that, dude, your dish sucked, but in the best intention of saying, let's make it better. Right.
on that note, like I found this recently out about myself, right?
Yeah.
Having a conversation with a friend where he's an engineer, so he reads things.
We were talking about mushrooms, my bad.
Yeah, we were talking about mushrooms. and he was talking about this where he was like, I have a very certain theme about people who I tend to get closer to, whether it's instantly or later on, right? And it's a very specific mentality. And he was telling me like, you tend to gravitate towards people who are only about like 7% of people on this earth. And he was reading this study about human beings.
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't know the exact number, but let's use these arbitrary numbers, right? 93% and 7%. 93% of people when this case study was done, right? They are people who are likely more. So let's say, for example, we go into the food example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most people who are probably listening to this probably know that you probably fall into this category. It's not a bad thing. It means you're the normal one. You're 93% of the world. Somebody cooks you food, right? Or let's say I cook food. I cook food and I'm the other 93%. I'm the 93% that when I cook food, I want you to say that you like it or something positive about it, even if you don't like it.
Sure.
And if you say that you don't like it, I think that you're being rude to me.
Sure.
And you're an asshole.
Yeah.
That's 93% of the world.
Because you can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Versus the other 7%, which is the category that I'm in, and a lot of friends who I really like are in, is we cook food, you eat it, and you go, oh, I don't really like this. Then we go, oh, well, let me try to make something else for you.
Sure.
And then let me try to adjust this. What don't you like about this?
For sure.
And that's only 7% of the world.
Yeah.
But my lens and my view of the world is that, oh, I thought this is how everybody is. I was like, no. We're actually in the small amount.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And when he showed me the study, and I'll bring it up later on, where I was like, holy shit, this whole time, I assume people like were more like me, and they're not. Where I feel like if I cook something and then somebody was like, hey, bro, it's a little tough, you could have done this and that. I'm like, oh shit, you're right. Maybe I'll do that next time. Most people are like, I can't believe you said that. Like, I cooked this for you. I did all this work and you're going to say this to me?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. And that's when my wife chimed in. She goes, I've never had it hurt like, but that is you. You are that. You're that person where you'll make a cheesecake 7 fucking times, even though 6 times people told you it was good.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
So, that's kind of
like, dude, I just want to know the data. Stop telling me I like it. Okay. I just to make a better cheesecake for you. I want to know the truth.
Yeah.
No. And then going back to tie into the callback of, you hate fucking people who are going to be too focused on being the nice person always. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And agreeable people tend to be very dishonest and also very selfish. And what I mean by that is that there's somebody that's in my life that I know that's a very agreeable person. Now, on the surface area, a lot of people didn't understand within my group. It's like, what exactly don't you like them? They're always happy and they're always smiling and they're always nice.
Yeah.
I was like, because it's dishonest.
Yeah.
Because when they're not happy, I can sense it.
Course, yeah.
But here in their smiles.
Yeah.
And I would say, they asked me, what was the first time you felt that about them?
Yeah.
I've known this person for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And every time they talk to me, they greet me like they met me for the first time. And what I mean by that, it's almost industry-like, where it's like, how are you? How have you been?
Yeah.
We've been friends for 4 fucking months. You should never greet me like that.
Sure.
And, they kind of sat there and they were like, oh, I see what you're saying. I was like, it's almost like they live in this Truman world where they can't handle the fact that there's somebody that might dislike them. And so everything that they say is catered to what they think I like, but they don't know me. So I know they're lying.
Yeah.
So being around that person is also very dishonest. And what I found out is that because I tend to be a little bit more on the truthful side, sometimes to a fault, that when I would speak to them about opinions that was disagreeable, they would go home and they would cry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, hold on. But every time you saw me, you were smiling.
Sure.
You could have talked to me about that, and then I could have adjusted a little bit, and then we could have worked this out. But that person who's so agreeable can't fathom the idea that somebody dislikes them.
Yeah.
And so you end up inherently being a dishonest person.
For sure.
Yeah.
It always, again, it goes back to like, if we just focus on like being truthful, and this is where I draw my line to a certain degree, right? If I don't have a relationship with that person, even then sometimes I'll be truthful, but it's more just because I want to be a dick, right? You know what I mean? But like, if I don't know that person and I don't really have an invested time with that person, then there I can see maybe just not saying something, right? But because, like I want to be a dick, and because also sometimes, I also want to just say, hey, maybe like, here's something that like everybody else is thinking, but has nobody ever said to you, that's, also like, was shaky fun in of itself, like, and you know what I mean? Like, but anyways, like focusing on being truthful is definitely, is my priority, hopefully till the day that I die.
Is that what the shrooms did for you? Or is that something that you've been struggling with for a while?
In a lot of ways, right? Like we even first started talking. Remember that time when we FaceTime about like during the George Floyd stuff?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like, like obviously like I didn't live in K-Town, but like I'm old enough where I was during their LA riots.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously like the church that I went to, like, half those rooftop Koreans were like fucking cheap names at like the church, at Youngnak Church,
Mm-hmm.
So, the motherfuckers, with the fishing, casually shooting shit. Anyway, so like, that was like when I saw that, I was like scared. Like I was not scared. There's like some kind of
uneasiness.
Trigger. Yeah. Well, yeah. And then more than the average person, like, because like, I saw that happen before. I also have like friends and their families who are still like basically poor because of that era, because, whatever, their businesses got burned down, right? But anyways, we started talking. That's when we first started talking, like kind of more outside of Little Meats, right? That was our first conversation. That was like the kickoff to pandemic.
That was. Right? Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so like think about that. That's like that first time where like we actually like kind of had a combo, And it was also too, right? Because it's also because I know that you're like, you have a footprint in the Asian American community, obviously.
Yeah.
And so a part of me was like also at the same time, like, and I always struggle with this, right? And, I always joke about it in the most forms of like, even like Korean supremacy, right? I don't mean Korean supremacy like a white supremacist Korean supremacist. I mean Korean supremacy as just being
Korean
super
pride,
proud
baby.
of your fucking kimchi. You know what I mean? Anyways, like it's like, I always grew up where I was always thought like politically, like, I was never political. I don't think I am now either, but like, I always thought of myself as like, shoot, like I always had this like idea. I'm like, man, when like rich white people and conservatives want to use like the Asian community for one thing, to, the model minority, right? And then flip that back over to like, like let's say the Black community is like, for us, we are the model minority myth in a lot of ways, but, like we're pawns. Basically, is like I felt like a lot of times growing up, like I always felt like the Asian American community, we were always pawns of other races. Like
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But it's so crazy, right? Like we're like the biggest population in the world, right? And like obviously, not in the United States, but like it's just interesting. Like we have our own unique story too.
Mm-hmm.
Like we understand obviously the hardships of being like a minority in the sense of like, coming over as immigrants and things like that, our parents' generation or whatever. But then we also like super duper 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 like want to like financially succeed and, like start families and, whatever, the typical nuclear thing, right? Too, right? There's like, there's always like that constant like,
the hard part too for a lot, I think for this younger generation, right?
Yeah.
And, a lot of people in our age bracket and group, sometimes they shit on the younger generation a lot. Their biggest struggle now is that they like identity is the biggest talk in the last like 5 or 6 years, right? And, sometimes when I have a conversation about this, they don't understand why I don't care, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not that I don't care about what you're going through, is that I don't ever need to think about my identity because I know who I am.
Yeah.
And I don't need to care if somebody else knows
what you just be who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I say that, I'll tie it into entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Well, they go, oh, like you rep for us Asians. I actually don't. I actually rep for myself. And my Asianness comes out because I am Asian.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a byproduct of everything that I've grown up with.
Yeah.
I don't talk about my love for fucking kimchi being the best fucking accoutrement to any type of meat on this world because it's the cool thing to say. I do it because I've eaten it my whole fucking life. You know what I mean? So the Korean supremacy in me comes out because it's just who I am. You know what I mean? And I think when this younger generation gets to truly understand that, right? Like you can work on your own excellence and understand that a part of your excellence is also your Asian identity that help build this part of who you are. Life becomes a little easier and it becomes less about your identity politics, right? And so, during this time, like a lot of people, I have felt their frustrations because I did understand. It's like every time something bad would happen, right? It's like, well, how come you Asians aren't standing up for us? Aren't you a minority? Got it. We're there for you. Then we go through stuff. Hey, we're going through bigger problems. Your problems don't matter. So it's like, okay, well, what the fuck do you want from us now?
Sure.
You know what I mean? So at that point, I'm not saying fuck everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm saying focus on, let's focus on our community, right? Because at this point, we're like bowing down to the white man, right? And then we're trying to ally with like BLM, right? Which is not a bad thing. But if you want to talk about your identity, right? And your identity is constantly bowing down to everybody else, begging for them to protect your culture, that is your responsibility. You can do that. You can support other cultures, but you also have to uplift your own.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes with like Asian Americans, like the hardest part that they have to deal with is that even when we try to carve our Asian American identity, we try to do it in the style of how other people do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it's like when they,
and it obviously doesn't fit because of all of the nuances in every single culture.
Exactly. Like there's, there was Black Lives Matter and then we had yellow peril. Why? Like that was from like the 80s or something, right? Why? Move on from that shit. We didn't have to go ahead and add our own tag. We got our own fucking thing going on here. You know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like the kids who talk about Asian pride the most, you guys are the ones who are actually ashamed of your culture the most, and you're trying to make it as white packaged as possible when you don't fucking have to.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Every fucking food video that I see on Instagram is always somebody doing a stupid ass fucking voiceover of how much you hated being Asian when you were a kid. Like, what is this shit? You know what I mean? And you're not doing it because it's an important story to hear. You're doing it because it gets you views.
I mean, most people are boring. You know what I mean?
Yes, I understand. I get it.
I always sound like I'm the apologist for everybody. You know what I mean? No. But like, it's like, I also get it. Like, man, if you're boring, then, you're gonna, I don't know, like movie reference. I'm fucking old. Like American Beauty. I don't know. I remember the scene where fucking, Kevin Spacey, rest in peace. he was trying to hook up with.
God, Kevin Spacey just died. You just reminded me right now.
No, he's not. No, he's not dead.
Oh, I thought you said rest in peace.
No. I mean, like rest in peace. Like he was like one of the OG cancellations. You know.
Oh, I thought you said Kevin Spacey died.
When I mean rest in peace, like I meant like sorry. He got canceled.
Yes.
Whatever,
Okay.
Right. Him and he's trying to hook up with like his daughter's friend. This blonde girl, and then at some point like she says like I'm a virgin. And he's like oh, and then they're like they stop, and then she was like. She's like, her biggest fear was to ever be boring, and like when, and then like Kevin Spacey says something like, oh, you're, boring is the last thing you could ever be or whatever. And then she's like, yeah, there's nothing worse than being boring, The apologist in me, whenever I see those videos and I'm like, it's so cringe or so painful where I'm like, like the snobbiness in me kicks in, or just because I know that that's just not the right thing to do in terms of like, let's say cooking or food, or that's not going to taste good. Right. If you're boring, man, you got to make yourself look not boring.
But the thing about that is too, it's okay to be boring, man.
True.
Like once again, people who are great entertainers, they are the outliers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with being boring.
Yeah. For sure.
To be honest with you, most people are.
Yeah.
And because you guys are boring, you guys allow entertainers to do what they fucking do.
Yeah.
You don't have to. Like when they go, hey guys, I just want to tell you what I did this morning. Nobody fucking cares.
Yeah.
We don't have to fucking know.
Sure.
And then I asked somebody, I was like, oh, you want to make a living off of this? It's like, no, this is just, I feel like this is the thing that, no, you don't have to do anything. I don't need to know about the ham sandwich that you had at the gas station.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the fatty in me, will I eat it for free? Probably.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And so, going on to another tangent too like,
but we definitely got to bring it back to mushrooms though, because I definitely want to share some stuff that I've been going through.
For sure.
Like, but for sure.
When we always talk about food, like it's not on a level of snobbery. Like I eat everything and anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I actually think that people who create food content who don't care about food, they're actually the snobs because they want to be this knowledge and fucking portal for what is good and what's hot. That's snobbery to me.
That template works if you're using real data and science.
Yeah.
Right. So like, for example, as if you're like scientifically almost like, lab coat style, like searing a steak where you make the ultimate like crust and sear, for sure. Like, you know what I mean? Like you can talk about like, the point I'm trying to say is when you make something good, you are definitely the type of person where you want to know why it's good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody who cooks or cares about it, right? They're always going to want to know the why because that variable is under control.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's,
I mean, I feel like that's like the thing that we share in common, right? It's like that. Okay. Yeah. It's like, oh, like
I'm a culture scientist. How about this? I fucking value science. Thank you, scientists. I can never be one.
Oh, if you guys want to know why I'm fucking so into tomatoes, it's because this fuckface. I failed my tomatoes last year because there was a crazy heat wave of like 100 and something degrees. He gave me his beautiful little transplants, and then this heat wave happened. They were growing beautifully. 120 degrees for fucking 2-3 weeks obliterated them. They weren't strong enough to survive it.
Yeah, and
I got so sad.
You know what though? What's dope about it is, I mean, at the same time, also, like, you know me, I love trying to find out and do as much research before I start like a project. Again, it's not like a big project that has to do with money. It's just, like I want to grow tomatoes, right? So I want to take it seriously. So I want to learn about it as much as I can, right? My goal before I start anything that I want to try to get better at or learn is I try to learn all of the fuck ups and know why the fuck ups happen, because I already know I'm going to fuck it up, right? So like for even me, last year was like my first season of growing tomatoes, right? And I was like, as weird as this sounds, I was very excited every time I fucked up. I fucked up a bunch of times because every time I fucked up, I was like, oh, I overwatered. Oh, I underwatered. Oh, I gave it too much attention. That was actually one of my biggest takeaways last year was I gave my tomatoes too much data, too much science, too much attention. You know, I fed it too much. I gave them too much nutrients. I did all of that where they were sickly motherfuckers. So if anything was like trying to like, you know, make their life hard, they would get fucked, you know? But anyways, on that though is right. Like even just like kind of talking about like what we've kind of even started talking on that dialogue during those times when we first started talking, I grew up, you know, like, I mean, I've showed you pictures of my parents' place and stuff. You know, they're fucking she-wears motherfuckers, right? You know, backyards got like a pond, like a fucking palm tree hanging over the fucking pond, you know?
Thomas's dog food eggs.
Yeah, he did.
Hey, grade A stuff, dude.
Dude, shout out to my dad, dude. He's a guy. If he was a white guy, he'd be a white supremacist, like maybe for real, or at least a redneck at the very least, you know? But anyways, you know, chicken eggs, if you raise them right, they're not a cheap, I mean, maybe nowadays, but like, you know, like before the egg prices got crazy, growing your own eggs, it wasn't the most reason. You want to do it for budget reasons. Like, meaning the total cost of getting like, let's just say like your GMO eggs or whatever. Of course, farmers market $1 each eggs. Even then, I don't know. If you're raising that in a way that you're buying everything to supply the chickens, it's going to cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, before the chicken eggs prices were like $3.99 for a dozen. You know, it was like fucking nothing.
Exactly. Now, again, shout out to Thomas, dude. You know, my dad, like, you know, people come over and like they look at, you know, my parents' backyard and they're like, man, my parents must be hippies and, you know, they're all about like nature. Like
fucking Huntington Library.
Yeah, and this and that, right? But, dude, Thomas, that motherfucker loves giving them dog food because dog food, his logic is this. I guess he's got a point, right? But long story short is, you know, he grew up with animals where they get whatever's around, right? So motherfucker gets the cheapest dog food you can buy at Costco, obviously the biggest bag, and that's their main portion of their diet. Do they get some grain? Yes. But the main portion is going to definitely be dog food. Yeah, which is, it's fine. Chickens can totally eat it. They're fucking walking dinosaurs. They can eat whatever the fuck they want, really.
The eggs are great.
Yeah. But that's Thomas's way. But, you know, even my gardening journey, though, really kind of started around that time when we first started talking again. So, like, that's where, like, you know, we were doing all those stupid TikTok, like, you know, eat the romaine and then, you know, leave the bottom and then, like, but it never turns into a romaine and then it's bitter as fuck. And then you're like, these fucking internet motherfuckers. So, look, I'm not going to lie. Okay. Obviously, like, I know when people are bullshitting, even in like gardening and stuff to a certain degree, but I got swindled a lot the first week. I was like, yeah, I'm going to regrow everything, you know, which some things do. You fucking take those green onions. Yeah. No matter what you do, if you put it in the ground and keep it like relatively moist, it's going to fucking come up. But anyways, that's where my real kind of gardening journey grew. Because again, I'm tying my parents in because I grew up with a lot of like, I guess, hippie organic type culture because, you know, my mom, she's mad. She were so, you know, country like. And so she's like, you know, she grew up growing her food, you know, like greens and all of that. So I grew up with all of that stuff, you know. That's why I still, even though I'm a fatty and I'll eat like the most terrible foods, I also love just greens, you know, because I grew up eating that type of stuff. Anyways, bringing that all tied together is like my parents, man, like that gardening experience, of course, has helped me, but like the real thing started during pandemic. And then basically from pandemic, that's when I kind of got more and more into it, right? And then, you know, I moved into my parents' investment property house. And then, you know, like now that I had a yard, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start trying to fuck around, right? So,
and you know, that whole gardening thing too, you know, people are like, well, why do you continue to do it even though you messed up? It's like, gardening is actually very therapeutic for me. Yeah. Like there's something about, I went even as far as this year, I didn't buy a single tomato plant. I germinated everything. Fucking thing.
Yeah, and because you thought you were going to fail and you thought that, you know, you might have less than, and what'd you do? Like you sowed 72. Like 70 plus seeds. Yeah. And then guess what happened? It did happen because once again, California weather's fucking weird. Yeah. It hailed. Yeah. It rained for like hurricane fucking rain shit. Yeah. Fucking half of them caught blight. Yeah. They got fucked up. Yeah. And I was like, good. And then the ground temperature, I don't know, it's probably warmer here, but you know, I'm up by the mountains.
Oh yeah, your place is a lot colder. And so there was this period where it was like warm, where at nighttime it was like staying around like 40-ish. I'm like, oh, it could survive because I wanted to harden them off. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere at night, fucking hail wrecked them.
Word.
And I'm like, well, there goes half of them.
Parting them off is, when you get them prepped for growing up in this ideal environment, and then you're like, hey, motherfuckers, why don't you hang out, not outside, but like in a shaded area or something where it can kind of get used to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you don't harden off your tomato plants, what happens is like the leaves are very, very tender. And if you felt a tomato plant that was actually kind of, let's say, in a greenhouse outside versus something indoors, it's like literally baby skin and then fucking ajashi handshake skin. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Shout out to all of those, shout out to fucking influencers who are like useful in the sense of like that type of stuff.
Oh,
like,
dude.
You know what I mean? Like
California
the gardening dudes.
Yeah.
And again, for sure, there's obviously some frauds in there, but you know what I realized what's so amazing about like YouTube these days? I mean, obviously it's been like this for a while, but I guess it's just putting it into words is like, even if you have a big ego about your brand and who you are, and let's say you're a fucking douchebag, like let's say Gardner, the cool part is when you make a claim, you have just as many other hungry cats who are going to expose you and do science projects to debunk you.
Yeah.
Based off of human ego and jealousy and trying to get more clicks and more money, for me as a consumer, I get a lot of good benefit because I'm like, dude, these motherfuckers, because they hate each other so much, or, of course, I'm looking at it from that. Of course, there's a lot of reasons why people like start, using science to debunk each other, right? You want to do that in the scientific community, right? Because you want to find the truth of something objectively, whatever, with all of the variables or whatnot, right? So I feel like it's interesting because YouTube, people can get really good at the science of a lot of things because people are going to battle test you on a large form, right? The problem with like labs where everything's all, you got a budget, right? And with that budget, the R&D department has a budget and, they're going to reach out to, I don't know, those like mailers where like, you go and you're part of a fucking experiment or like a statistic or something, right?
And it happened really well with gardening. Like I just remember like even a couple of years before when I first started, gardening, one of the biggest things that people said was, oh, when you plant your tomatoes, throw Epsom salt in there.
Yeah.
And then, and then people were that only works when it's in
very
containers.
Specific.
It's in a small container, they're going to need it. But that took somebody to be like, hey, shut the fuck up. You're wrong. Because every video prior to that was you have to use Epsom salt.
Yeah,
and so it's like, that's what you're talking about there, where there's like this evolution of information.
Yeah.
It's like, this isn't true. And then after they got called out, now all the videos are, you don't need Epsom salt.
Yeah. And then you get the people who just like take all of the data and then they hash it together and then they generically put it all together, but then they're a boring person.
Oh, yeah.
And then, it's like, okay, how many times do I have to hear it's, you get root rot because of this reason and that, and you hear the same thing over from every single person. And then at some point, like you just know that person never tried it themselves. They just said it because they saw that happens, like they never made the mistake themselves. And
gardening honestly reminds me of like food. Like you have to just do it to know what the fuck is wrong.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Anything. Yeah.
Like something small that I thought about this year was like, plants are healthy right now because I understand watering better.
Yeah.
Not from a scientific standpoint
of
just doing it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if somebody asks me now, they're like, well, how do I water? I can give you the same advice that I always read online. Stick your finger in about an inch or two. If it's dry, then it probably needs water, right? But even that doesn't and then guess what? You have to make an adjustment because when the plant grows bigger and is more vigorous and fruits are there, that container is going to dry up like that.
Yeah.
Because the size that it is now, I've watered fill up the Oyas maybe every 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
Guess what? When that plant is fucking 6 feet tall, that's every day.
Yeah.
But there's like things that you just know from just starting it from seed.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I was thinking that.
And look, it just speaking about tomatoes, right? Like I told you this, I didn't want to go through like, again, because I'm juggling other things in my life right now too, where, I have to kind of prioritize, obviously, my other random side projects and other stuff. But germination is like its own thing to geek about, right? It's like in food, like, bread program, like bread, separate that,
master yeast. And
it's, you know what I'm saying? And versus, whatever, right? Same thing, fucking germination, like, which is basically, getting the seeds to go, meow, that part, I was like, dude, I want to get the tomato part down first. You know what I mean? So I bought seedling. I would go buying seedlings, or I freeload, cuttings from, obviously anybody, whoever, right? And obviously you're literally starting my alpha generation of tomatoes, right? Obviously, I'm going to try to get some more of the varieties, and, we'll share our notes and stuff. But, shit, I forgot what I was talking about with the tomatoes.
I relegated to cooking and food and learning and adjusting, and then
learning, food, adjusting. Oh, yeah. Again, going back to the data and science and people hashing the data together, I think it's amazing. Like, when you get to a point where you can listen to all of these crazy people, get the right data. I start tomatoes or any project trying to learn all the mistakes that everybody's kind of hashed together. Yeah. And so my first year, I learned a lot of things, and I made a shit ton of mistakes. Was I able to actually get tomatoes and harvest and have them?
You had a pretty good yield.
Yeah, not bad. Honestly, like I could have done it like maybe 10 times better than I did the first year. I didn't do bad, but the cool part was every time something didn't work or didn't go as planned, I knew exactly what I did wrong, So that part, like, that's where I felt really good after that season.
You felt like did you feel like the watering was an issue? Because you had a drip system though.
I did, but that didn't happen until like probably, again, I don't know how long my season lasted, but let's break it down to percentages. Or I only started to kind of figure out watering, and I don't fully have it down yet, but I got it down like maybe 3/4 into my growing season. So those first 3 fucking quarters, tomatoes were like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, what's I'm coddled. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? You go and you're like, oh shit, tomato. Then you go like this, and the tomato like fall off and shit, So anyways, like, I didn't figure that out until way later, but that's cool because at least now I know. And I read about, again, like people who are over aggressive with watering and this and that. So it was cool to know like that was something that I can definitely fix. And I got much better by that 3/4.
Oh, I'm doing the Oyas this year, dude. Like, I wanted to do a drip system, but my tomatoes are scattered so far everywhere. It was just too much. So I was like, let's just do the Oya and see what happens. Yeah. And even Oyas are a little tricky. They're not as easy as people say it is.
And also, too, you're fucking, you're fucking, Dave So. So, you can get an Oya for each one of those. For me, I'm like, where can I get these ceramic things for 5 cents? Well, not $50.
So, like, surprisingly, like Armstrong had some cheap Oyas.
Oh, okay.
So online, they're fucking expensive as shit. So I was going to do the thing where you get 2 terracotta pots, glue them together.
Exactly.
But then
you went down that rabbit hole too.
Exactly. So the ones at Armstrong, right? Like an Oya like this big, which online's like $70. Armstrong, $20.
Yeah.
And so, and
then $20. That's great, dude.
It's 20 fucking
you're
bucks.
a bad friend for not telling me about it.
I just figured
I know, because I got that. And I'm doing it in I get it.
You got a drip system, that's why.
Yeah. I get you.
I think that's the cool thing. Like,
when Oyas being the material where it's ceramic, or it's the type of
terracotta.
Like, it's it's a fucking terracotta, dude, fucking dumbass. But it's like porous, so when you put water in it, it leaches out into the soil, so it's like nice and smooth, and it gets there, and you don't have to water it all the time. You just fill that up when you're supposed to.
It was like this African technique where that's how you save money on watering too, because the roots inherently, the tomato plants will grow towards the terracotta and it'll actually grow around it. And it'll suck all the water that it needs. But you can't just do it off jump. You still have to water regularly for the first 2 weeks in order for the roots to grow around it.
It's got to reach. It's got to get to the point. I got you.
So, like the first 2 plants that I bagged, I didn't do that. And I was like, damn, motherfucker's looking weak as shit. And I was and I did a little research. I was like, my fucking bad. I thought the terracotta was going to take care of everything.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's looking a little more healthier now. Yeah. But I'm back onto the topic of like the shrooms and what it did for you. Like, it was interesting because we were in the car and, you were talking about, this is obviously wraps in with the whole part of like being honest and kind of seeing yourself in the mirror.
Yeah.
What was your experience like while doing shrooms?
So I did it 5 times now. It's been my 5th time. And like, for me is like, it's like obviously recent. And also like, for me, I know like, how people have been using it like in the underground, like in terms of like for therapeutic use, right? To deal with trauma, anxiety, this and that, right? And we talked a little bit about it, right? Because I'm a little high right now, it's kind of hard to remember the timeline of which exact experience was when and what. But definitely the first time, it was like a very profound experience where I was talking with my partner and we basically spent the whole night talking. And it was just fascinating because that person, she was sharing about like, where she's gone in her career and, even just like family and just, things like that. Right. And I could literally visually see her face changing to the mold of like what she was, like symbolically in a way. Right. So like when there was a point where like I even like imagined, like not imagine, like I saw it before my eyes, her in her like silver fox years. And she was like, in a way, speaking in front of a crowd, her insights about like, the industry that she's in, and like, it was like, I can see that visually. Right. So that experience was really interesting because like, we basically talked the whole night and we were able to kind of almost even enter a different channel of our relationship to a certain degree, which is like fascinating because it's like, me and my partner were like pretty communicative. Like we talk a lot. And with that, it's just like you kind of at some point when you've been with somebody for a while, you know your channels of like communication and like the things start tapering off and like, let's say maybe new things you might learn about a person. And it's not like I learned anything new, but it was just fascinating just to look at it from a different perspective, which in the end, the net positive was we became closer, or maybe even more vulnerable in a good way, or we opened up to each other more, or we let even more of our guard down. And I think we have a pretty low guard with each other. Yeah, I'd say like, we're pretty close in terms of the low guard that we have with each other. And what I mean by the low guard is like, I don't know. I don't know how to quantify that. Maybe how
it's just like you're comfortable to be honest with each other.
Yeah, to be like honest, even like down to like every single detail, right?
Yeah.
Everything that matters, right? Again, obviously it's not like, we know everything about each other and all of that stuff too,
You're not the first couple that I heard that did this. Like my friends talked about it on their podcast, but when they had a rough patch in their marriage, and one person was a little incapable of understanding the other person's emotion, albeit this motherfucker's on the spectrum, so get it. But they did some psychedelic shit, and then this motherfucker just ended up crying and like opening up all this other shit.
Yeah, I told you I fucking cried so much in the last 4 years, dude, or 3 years.
Yeah, like, and it was just all stuff that he just didn't knew was a problem or stuff that he was thinking about.
Yeah.
Because he's such a binary person. Everything is black and white.
I got you.
When that gray area where he had to think and sit in his emotions happened, it kind of made him like, oh, I can empathize now. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get what this person's saying, Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly why, what's that dude's Michael Pollan, like his book and Netflix series, How to Change Your Mind. Like, sometimes like, a title of something and then you watch it and you forget that the title is exactly well thought out for what it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It does change your mind on a lot of things, you know? Yeah. So like another experience that I can kind of share or kind of remember clearly was my most recent one where I was looking at myself in the mirror, right? And it was just, I saw every part of like the ugliness of myself. Like I was seeing it, right? And again, just like how like, like my partner's face changed to that silver fox, that same like looking at myself, I was looking at myself, but there was a point where it looked like, dude, I'm like, I get so scared. Like about like monster stuff and whatever. Like, like if I woke up and there was like a little baby saying, come play with me, running at me, I would just die right there, right? In the middle of the night. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but it's easy for me to say that. But if I saw a little baby running towards me in the middle of the night, I'm like, I would probably just die. Okay. Anyways, fuck, why did I bring that up?
Silver fox.
Oh,
staring yourself in the mirror, seeing all the ugly stuff about you.
Yeah. So I was looking at myself and it was just a nasty looking sight. Like it was still myself, but like, I have a shit ton of moles, but the moles looked really fucking grimy, right? I just looked in a way that I knew that I was just, this is the result of my poor relationship with my health and my poor relationship with food as well too. And then also I started thinking about like another experience I had with a friend in which I was so sad that this friend couldn't kind of face his reality. Me, myself, I'm like, I was sad in that moment for that friend, but I should be sad for my fucking self right now, where like, how could I also have any like type of insight on anyone's life and talk about how much I love life when I'm not even taking care of myself too? Like in the sense of like let's say staying healthy or like, trying to like, live for the longevity by not killing myself with my poor relationship with food, So it kind of all tied together in a lot of ways. I know it sounds crazy, but for me is that idea was I needed to start focusing on like, I need to change my face so that the next time I look at myself, I can look like somebody who's like proud of that appearance of like what one might look if they actually cared about their health or, like that.
So is that just in relation to?
And that was also when I transitioned, right? Because, like I did like keto way back in the days, like super early, lost a shit ton of weight, like, I don't know, probably like not as much as like Ed, but like,
Oh, you were a big boy. You showed me some photos
I mean,
of
I used to be
yourself.
like 300 plus 10 pounds, but like I'm saying keto was more in the recent years, right? Like it was like, I don't know, 2016 or something like that.
Yeah.
So my relationship with food, where was I with that? My relationship with food has always been, so again, it's just coming full circle and just looking at my life and like seeing like, man, like I'm an ugly person. How can I have an insight on anybody else's life? When I say ugly person in every aspect, but in this particular trip, it was like focused on like my health, and like, if I want to be helpful to people for a long time, if I'm capable of helping people, then I should do it in a way that I feel okay with being worthy of helping somebody. I don't know if that makes sense, but like,
you just feel like you're bullshitting.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just comes as simple as to that. Yeah. It's like coming from a bullshitter in a way, right?
Yeah.
So.
I mean, that's like, I feel like those are good experiences that everybody should have, right?
Yeah.
And then, for us, and I've talked about on the podcast with me and Ed, well, I guess all three of us, like just dealing with being extremely overweight, right? Like I wasn't 300 pounds, but I was close to it. I was like two.
Wait, how tall are you? 6?
I'm 6'1". So I was like close to 290.
Yeah.
Right. And, when you kind of live in your own fucking filth, you don't know that you're fucking dirty. It's just the best way to put it.
For sure.
Like your everyday is this is your status quo.
Yeah.
Right. And because you don't know any better, you start to also just rationalize a lot of shitty things that are happening in your life. But you're like, oh, this is just me. Right. And for me, my lie to myself was, oh, I'm fat because I have to be funny. Right. And it was
it's a little bit true though.
Yeah.
It's like how more people are more critical. You like, this is a fat guy thing. Man, if you get a stain on your shirt and you're fat, and if somebody sees you, it's like, yeah, of course that fucking fat motherfucker's got a stain on his shirt. You know what I mean? Anyways.
But in that type of sense too, it's like, you kind of use this as a crutch, right? You have to be fat to be funny.
Yeah.
It's like, no, fat is not an identity.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if that was the case, the most famous comedians would all be fat as fuck. They're not.
Yeah.
Why? It's because they don't rely on the stupid, like on either like a moniker or a prop or whatever the fuck that it is, right?
Sure.
And having to deal with that. Losing weight for me was hard because Fat David was my identity.
Word.
I made
got
it
you.
my identity.
Yeah, because I mean, you got to work with what you got in a way.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
obviously too, like being a big guy and starting off younger with low self-esteem,
Mm.
I had a switch one day where I was like, I'm gonna show people like I don't give a fuck what I am. I'm gonna still pull bitches. I'm gonna do all this other stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be successful, know how to talk to people, get over my anxiety.
Yeah.
And I did that all while being a fucking fat guy.
Yeah.
So it was almost like a sense of pride for me.
Yeah, for me.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And it's such a weird thing to think about, right? And I'm sure a lot of people don't.
Well, for
understand.
me, it's I don't call it like I don't know if I'm being like narcissistic or something, but it's definitely what is that? Like what you're talking about? Like a lot of times I always think I'm like the exception. Of course, everybody always like, you know what I mean? And like, but that's like, and there's
You're
a fine
fat,
line though too,
but you're fast
right?
as shit.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, you know, like I took Taekwondo, right, growing up, which, you know, don't ever take Taekwondo if you want to learn to fight. Learn to fight, and then learn some Taekwondo for sure. You know what I mean? But anyways, you know, I was a fat motherfucker, but I could still throw a fucking beautiful
Like
fucking chagi, you know, like a spinning hook kick, right? You know, shout out to Edson Barbosa, you know, being the first person to land a spin kick in the UFC. Anyways, but that aspect, you know, I always wanted to be the exception. Yeah, I wanted to be the fat guy who could still get a pretty girl or something like that, you know, for sure. That was, I totally feel you.
Yeah, and you know, that was also a point of pride, like even in sports. And even all my friends, it's like, dude, you're fucking fast for somebody your size. It's like, and I probably fed off that type of shit.
Yeah.
You know, and conversely now, like I see it in other people, and that was the place that I used to be in.
Yeah.
It's like you're almost like scared to change because your identity is too hooked to the person that you shouldn't be.
Yeah,
which is very fucking weird. That's a weird next level fucking sabotagery. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
we're all fucking aliens, dude.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when I started to lose weight and I started to feel better, not even in the physical sense, which is something that comes along with it, but it's just like physical in terms of like internally, I felt better. You know what I mean? Like
for sure.
sleeping better. I walk a little faster.
Yeah.
I don't get the itis because of better food choices and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, this is a better way to live. Like, And you know, there's moments too, because food to me is an addiction. It's a hardcore ass addiction.
Yeah.
Like,
and also emotional eater too, right?
Oh, for sure. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like even like my
happy or sad.
Mainly for me, happiness, because like I love food. So
for sure.
Even how I connect with my parents is through food. Through my mom, it's food. So every November,
that's what we're different. Dude. My parents are simple life.
My mom can fucking throw down like a motherfucker.
Got it.
That's why we called her for the kimchi. You know what I mean? I'm like, how do we do this?
My mom's a cook person, but that's, you know, you got to eat that same cook for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, where at some point you don't heat it up. You just, you know, you've had every cook in every fucking multiverse of cooks in cold temperature. Anyways.
Yeah. And so like, you know, with that whole part of like food being a part of your identity, even in your personal relationships and even with family, it starts to affect you because now it's like, you almost can't say no to food ever.
For sure.
I couldn't say fucking no to food.
Yeah, for sure.
And even now I can't, but now I just portion it better.
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
you pick and choose your battles, and then you pick and choose what and who you're going to do it with.
Exactly. It's also you know, when you're full, you know, just stop.
Yeah.
Or just know like, okay, you ate a lot of food. So you have to work this off later.
For me, it's like lying, dude. I'm telling you, you know, I got to remind myself, I should stop eating now.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, let me tell you something. Whenever this guy, like he throws something at his place and we get the crew together, hey, we going to eat. It's going to happen.
Yeah. But it's funny, right? Because we have like also kind of like sometimes though, depending on which friends though, some of our friends are simple eaters, right? So then it's going to be when in Rome, you know, it's like about getting like, you know, 40 pack of chicken nuggets from McDonald's, you know, as opposed to like, you know, you know, I was about to say something bougie, you know, like roasted, smoked duck breast shaving over foie gras, you know, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll do both.
we'll have a little bit of both, man. And we could even go back and wrap it around to like when we were talking about food snobbery.
Sure.
One of the biggest comments that I used to get, you know, from people who think that I'm not saying like I'm this person who knows food.
Yeah.
But like people who think that they know food.
Yeah. But you got a lot of hours. You put in a lot of hours.
And when you're 300 pounds, you put in a lot of work.
Exactly.
You know?
Look, it's degenerate and all of that. But dude, at some point, I started actually getting a pallet for fucking all you can eat sushi.
Yeah.
So even to this day, right? What did I say for earlier? Did it?
We get some all you can eat sushi.
Yeah,
which is the spot I really want to try.
Yeah. You know, it's still, again, when in Rome, you know, that's what I grew up on. You know?
Exactly. And so like when people, for example, had a conversation with our mutual friend of ours who was, she was, she knows I do food and, I started cooking food or whatever. And then she saw me eat a filet of fish. And she was like, can't believe you eat that stuff. And I looked at her in disgust. I was like, the audacity. I was like, excuse me? I was like, what did you say? I was like, she was like, well, you like do food now. Like, why do you eat this stuff? I was like, because it's fucking delicious. What are you talking about? Nonsense. And I also had a sausage egg McMuffin. And this is when I got flip my shit. And this is the most stupid thing to flip your shit about. She goes, I don't even understand why you eat that sausage egg. It's not even a real egg. I got so mad, bro.
I don't eat a pre-frozen fish, it's the freshest ever. Oh, you can dry age fish too, right?
Or what people like, sashimi grade fish, like it's the freshest ever. It's not. That shit is, they flash freeze that shit.
Yeah, for sure.
You could tell people this all they want, but they just always know better. But I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to yuck your yum. You find that shit delicious? That is what it is.
When in
like
Rome.
it. I could have the fucking little thing with, creme fraiche caviar with this little chive.
Okay, wait, speaking of, sorry to interrupt, but speaking of the fish sandwiches, right? McDonald's Filet-O-Fish, okay? Am I allowed to talk about other businesses?
Hell yeah.
Business? Okay, so, shout out to May, May Lin over at, Daybird, right?
Daybird, Taiwanese fried chicken sandwiches, baby.
Yeah, just fucking, when it's on point, like that sandwich is fucking legendary, right? And it's like fucking boogie board that comes out.
I talked about it on my podcast. I say she's my favorite female chef as of right now.
Word, dude, May's, May shout out though, but May's got that face to be intimidated about. Like her default face is like, she's ready
That's why her fucking food is
I
good.
think she's going to fire me and I don't even know, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what's up, May? I'm like, don't fire me.
I actually had her food for the first time at Lacey.
Oh, word.
When she did the private dinner thing with Clara invited her for her birthday.
Oh, yeah.
And this is before she opened up Night Song.
That's when I was doing keto.
Was it Night Song, her restaurant? No,
it was Nightshade.
Night Song's a Thai place. My bad.
So anyway, shout out to May, but she got a fried chicken sandwich, but she just recently also put out a fried fish sandwich, right?
Oh, for real?
Yeah. So up until this point, honestly, I haven't had it, but I obviously know May's a fucking killer and she can make some good fucking food. And of course, like there's always going to potentially be consistency across the board. But I'm saying is when she makes that fucking chicken sandwich the way that she wants it to be made, I'm sure it's going to taste good. On top of that, there's like a caviar option that you can do, right? And look, it's an $80 fucking sandwich if you put the caviar, but the sandwich itself is whatever expensive normal sandwich that you get nowadays anyways, right? So people are going to be real mad about an $80 sandwich, which I get, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I don't know, if I was a baller and like I had like caviar as part of my regular inventory and I could afford it, yeah, of course I want to eat fucking, because it's going to work. I want to eat fucking
fried chicken caviar with my works.
Exactly, and I want to do that with my fried fish sandwich too, if I can. Look, I'm on a budget these days, so I'm probably again shout out to May, but I'm gonna get the regular one when I go. But outside of that, before that fish sandwich, and again, I'm already claiming that it's good even when I haven't even tried it, which is like obviously like. But again, you just know it's like fucking Kirkland. It's gonna be on point,
I'll tell you this, man, and a lot of people. This is like the other thing I don't like about food. Sometimes it's like, I like caviar, right? But when I see people eat caviar and they're rolling their eyes to the back of their head, I'm like, that's fucking fish eggs, bro. There's a lot of other things in this world that'll make you do that. I don't think it's caviar. And I love caviar, right? I like fish roe. I've had it my whole life. I feel
called out right now.
Hey, let me tell you something, you son of a bitch.
I did this in Japan when I had, again, Japan doesn't have everything that's the best, but the things that they're good at, look, dude, for real talk, my eyes did roll back.
Okay,
though.
Let me tell you something. Like, I enjoy it a lot, right? But when people talk, I'm specifically talking about sturgeon caviar.
Got it. Yeah, of course.
And I see like Gordon Ramsay.
One last thought. Sorry to interrupt one more time. LA River, like 40 years ago or something like that. And again, I'm going to probably have to fact check myself on this. But the LA River had fucking sturgeon in it.
Oh, 100%. The American River in Sacramento where I grew up, people fish for sturgeon. They have it.
So can you imagine, dude, being fucking like, down like the bike path in Frogtown, and then like
you see this prehistoric animal,
a fool with a 40, and then like on his like lowrider bike, and then you look down, and then there's
a fucking sturgeon.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, the American River, people fish for that. Where I grew up in Sacramento, so we saw that shit. But I see Gordon Ramsay and he takes this dollop of sturgeon and he eats it like it's the most amazing thing he's ever had in his life. I'm like,
Sure.
okay, listen here, you fucking jackass. It's delicious, right? It's even the same concept when I see people eat truffle, right? And they just, truffle's the best. It's it is not the best. It is something that's good with something else.
Yeah, and it's a part of a luxury as well too. Like you're a fucking liar to say that truffle is as good as it. I'm saying is there's just as much of the exclusivity of a black truffle. Again, black truffle is amazing.
Yeah,
it's
delicious.
Yeah, for sure.
I get it.
But there's also definitely an aspect of that, luxury and the separation, blinging out, or I don't know what do young people call.
Yeah, because having a conversation with friends about this who are foodies, and they're like, "Oh, you're fucking crazy." I was like, "Cool, let me put it to you like this.
Yeah.
I have a fucking gun to your fucking face. Right?
Yeah.
I was like, "What's your favorite cuisine?" They go, "Vietnamese food." "What's your favorite Vietnamese dish?" They're like, "It's bun ryu." I'm like, "Cool. I have a bowl of bun ryu and you're about to fucking die. I'm gonna blow your fucking head off. And I have a white truffle nugget. What are you eating?"
Yeah.
You're eating the fucking what? They're like, obviously that. Why? Because it's a more complete dish.
For sure.
And it's infinitely more delicious than this one piece.
Yeah.
If I told you right now, we're not talking about price. We're talking about what you want to eat.
Yeah.
That.
For sure.
I was like, that's why I think you're full of shit.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that truffle is disgusting. I love truffle. Like you have shaved truffle on just like some buttered potatoes.
Yeah.
God damn, delicious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sure. But that little thing right there, when I see people just talk about it because of the luxury aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, let's be real here, man. I'm taking, if somebody offered me like 2 slices of just white truffle, right? Some of the most highest quality shit. That shit's like $60 for like an ounce of it or whatever.
Yeah.
You put a Filet-O-Fish next to me.
Yeah.
I'm hungry. I'm eating that Filet-O-Fish.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm taking the white truffle.
But if the steam bun's not there though,
it might be a problem.
Then I'd have a problem.
I might have a problem. May Lid, man. Her food was, when her restaurant closed, I was fucking sad. Like it was my top, probably like 5 restaurants in LA at the time.
Got it.
She's very creative, and her food was always fun and it executed really well.
This is what I think though, that's also a lot of fun about like kind of, I don't want to say like the modern movement, but like the chefs who were trained, let's say classically, and then also like trial by fire where they work the line in these like high pressure environment, farm to table, like that type of, industry, right? The real toxic one at times, right? I mean, I guess the movie Chef is like this too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is, with Roy Choi, shout out to Roy Choi, but like, is this also philosophy of like just taking something that's not fancy, but just doing it with proper technique, care, AKA giving a shit.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. What's more attractive to any type of human being is a lot of times when they're giving a shit about anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of course, you can give a shit about things that are like not like, you shouldn't be giving a shit about. But I mean, like the things that, create value to, let's say, another person that they want to consume or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, like food has become, I feel like in like the 80s, right?
Yeah.
When somebody opened up a restaurant, and we're obviously not talking about highfalutin restaurants. We're not talking about the place you saw in Time magazine.
Yeah.
But a lot of these mom and pop stores, or even some of these independent businesses, when they were opening up restaurants, it was done out of necessity.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's done out of passion.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're getting to see people really just step up their game in terms of what they do. In other places, not so much.
Yeah.
But I'm really enjoying this movement of watching these high fancy chefs being like, fuck this. I just want to make what I want to make.
Yeah, this is where it gets real complex too, right? Mm-hmm. Is because, like, for example, right, I'm a LA native, right? I was born and raised in Southern California. Imagine you're, like growing up, never went to Mexico, okay? But I would eat LA street tacos a lot and also like the establishments, right? I grew up with that, but, like I'm in my 40s now, right? So I spent pretty much a big portion of my life eating LA street tacos, right? And I don't know what tacos might have tasted like. Again, obviously I've gone since, but like when I was younger, up until a certain point in my age, like I did grow up with a full childhood or almost the whole generation eating something that's not like part of my ancestry, but is also something that's not specific to like, it's not like I was eating tacos in Mexico.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then mix that with like, you know, obviously everybody, every Korean fucking has like, you know, meat lying around in their house in the sense of like when times are good, right? You got your bulgogi, you got your kalbi, you got whatever, right? Whatever Korean barbecue staple meats that you might have that you eat, right? You're going to have leftovers at times, right? And those leftovers, you're going to combine that with the tortilla that you're going to get. And again, it might start out with the fucking mission tortilla. And then it might end up at some point, you know, turning into a fucking masa from fucking the original guisados in Boyle Heights, like the fucking tortilla factory where they make the masa and you pick it up. And that's what guisados uses. I don't know if they still use it to this day, right? But, you know, whatever extremity is I still grew up and I can see like where Roy Choi's, you know, again, it's a dated concept, right? But you know, mixing an obvious leftover, a necessity of Korean barbecue, let's say, and then you have tortillas lying around, then it's like an immediate marriage, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think it's fascinating that in this modern culinary world with a lot of the restaurants or things that you see, a lot of it is like comfort and junk food or things that people grew up eating and going and accessing that's not pretentious, but just kind of adding more, like giving a shit, using like, you know, the technical techniques that you learn, right? From trial by fire in those kitchens, you know?
100%. Like there's this restaurant I tried, it's called Mr. T out in Los Angeles. And I believe the head chef is Thai, is a female Thai chef. But she's taking like aspects of stuff that she grew up eating from her mom and then repackaging and repurposing it in just executing it differently, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, this tastes like this, but it's different enough where it's elevated here. And elevated doesn't necessarily mean better than that dish.
Yeah.
It's just tightened up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's where that fun comes in. It's like, whoa, this is really fucking delicious. And it's a little more precise. And you know, part of the enjoyable part about mom and pop's place is that it's in the chaos. Like it's not precise. You know what I mean? Some days it's going to taste like this. Some days it's going to be a little different. Maybe a little spicy. Maybe a little extra sweet sometimes.
For sure.
And that's kind of like that home feel that I really enjoy sometimes. But when you go into this restaurant area, they start to become meticulous about it. X amount of tablespoons here. The millimeter width of this vegetable is like here.
Yeah.
And so every time you eat, it's the same enjoyable experience.
Dude, you know where I get anxiety though when it comes to food and like, because I'm a ratio guy. So like, you know, like, a
Korean
ratio guy
are
is
ratio foods, dude.
Huh?
Korean people are ratio people to the max.
But then at the same time, though, you know what gives me fucking shit ton of anxiety? Like when you're going eating out and eating panchan. And you know, like the loose panchans, the one where it's like, you know, choose your own adventure. Like you can or you, like there's no, you can't. Like there's some panchans where you can pretty much eat with everything, right? For me, it's just like, let's say I'm eating like Korean barbecue and there's a shit ton of panchan. I get like anxiety because I'm trying to keep and maintain my ratio. Where because I'm doing a constant ratio battle, I'm never stopping. So like there's no rest because I'm like, oh, I grabbed a bite of meat. Oh, I need a little bit of duck. I need a little bit of this. And then it just keeps going in this endless loop until there's obviously no more food.
You know who's a ratio guy? Fucking Ed.
Oh yeah, Ed. I heard this about Ed. Yeah, for sure.
Like I never noticed until I saw it. And it was everywhere that we went, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you see Ed, just notice like on his last bite.
I do the exact same thing. Like everything's down to a ratio. The last bite has to have every component from which you started.
See, I'm not like that.
Yeah, I get you.
I'm
disaster. Most people are normal. That's crazy. I get it. I'm an Ed on that too. You know fucking Santuka ramen?
Yeah.
You know the little plum?
Yeah. Don't tell me you fucking Robin. That's fucking ridiculous.
I have multiple people in my life that can fact check me on this.
Can I tell you guys something? That plum is the size of my pinky nail.
Already taking one bite out of it? You know, you got to use your precision chompers.
Absolute fucking nonsense.
Yeah, because it's all seed, and then there's
I need you to not do that anymore.
There's like there's a millimeter of meat, right? Like Robin. Between the seed and the meat. So the last bite of fucking salt Santuka ramen,
the size of this power button on this remote. That's how small it is. The bowl is this big.
Yeah. So when you say Ed's one of those guys, I'm one of those guys too.
That's okay. I understand.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
It's an example. It's the first thing I can think of.
That is crazy talk.
But again, this is also why with Korean barbecue, maybe because of course I'm a fat ass, but like, I mean, you know, like in here, I'm a fat ass. Like I get that. Like, so, you know, it's like, I don't know, like, what's that one place? Like, you know, I'll go for free, but I'll never go to pay for it. Genwa, right? They got like panchans galore, right? Dude, I'm just like, yeah, because it's like anxiety because I'm like, I need to try to get every little bite and then it just endless loop of it, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting when I see
ratios.
Like, you know what I really fuck with like Asian food? I feel like Asian food really understood the idea of acid in dishes. That, you know, growing up when I would always eat like American food or like, it was just always so fucking heavy.
Of course.
Korean people would always ask, where's the kimchi?
Yeah. Kraft mac and cheese.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, fucking delicious. Still one of my favorite mac and cheeses of all time.
Nostalgia, baby. Like, you know, they would have that. And then every time I never understood why my mom was like, I need kimchi. I need kimchi. And it's just, she needed something fermented. She needed something, you know, a little fucking pumse, you know, Korean supremacy, you know what I mean? Every time I remember I made Thanksgiving food, right?
Yeah.
She's like, I need some kimchi though. And I would always tell her, like, you're ruining the food. I was like, actually, she's not because it's so heavy. I made turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, macaroni and cheese. And then there'll be like some type of roasted vegetable.
Yeah.
And there was no acid anywhere. There was no pop of anything. And I'm like, now I get this. Like, this makes sense.
The best you get is cranberry sauce.
Exactly.
That's the best you get.
It's dessert to me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, like, you know, when I first had Thai food, right?
Yeah.
I remember that shit. It felt like an explosion of flavor in my fucking face.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, what?
Definitely party in your mouth.
Yeah. And, you know, very different from Vietnamese, Chinese, Korean, and Japanese, which was like my main staples. And I remember I had tom yum.
Sure.
Ate that shit and I was like, this is, I don't know what the fuck this is.
It's delicious, but when you smell it, it smells a little bit like shit on fingers. No. Fish sauce specifically.
Yeah.
You know,
horrendous.
I fucking love fish sauce.
It's
okay?
horrendous to smell.
Yeah. But when you smell it, you know, it's like, look, I'm a fucking dirty motherfucker. But, you know, like when you still got a little bit of juices on your butthole, you know, when you're younger, you go and you're like, oh, shoot. And then, you know, not just poo in the wild or not poo right out of the butthole, but once the oils in your finger creates something that should be titled shit on fingers as a separate classification of a genus. Okay. So shit on fingers, that motherfucker, fish sauce vibes.
Now I want you to make a commercial for fish sauce. I want you to sell this to white people.
Oh, dude.
Say, listen, I know like you are trying to get to know more about Asian culture.
Yeah.
I need you to stick your finger in your fucking ass.
Yeah.
When you smell it and go, lunch.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like, you come up with like some hip like name like SOF, like shit on, you know, like, but you never explain what it is, you know? SOF.
LA is very interesting, like the LA food scene. And, you know, this is like in comparison to from what I've seen from like New York, right? Which is, you know, there's a few places they consider meccas, right? In the United States. LA and New York happen to be one of them. San Francisco coming in a hard second.
Chicago too.
Chicago as well.
Yeah, I've never been.
Right?
Yeah.
LA is very interesting in which what I like about LA is that LA has a lot of eateries. And this is just my opinion. People can agree or disagree. There's so many institutions here that could give a fuck less about your seasonal dish. Like, you know what I mean? Year around, we serve the same shit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then with New York, I feel like they're trying so hard to compete in a small space that they always have to do the next best thing. So it'll be like, oh, seasonal ramps are here. So we're going to use ramp in our dishes.
Sure.
LA's kind of like, I don't give a fuck. Like, this is how we've had it.
Yeah.
This is what we're fucking doing.
Shout out to Korean supremacy though. You know, in Korea, ramps, I think there are ramps in Korea.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know if it's the same season as like it would be.
If it could be pickled, it's in a Korean dish.
Yeah, exactly.
And you see like American adaptations of our own side dishes that they don't have in Korea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, shout out to, like Roy Choi Korean taco, right? But back up more, right? LA transplants 3-bone galbi, right? Versus like the LA galbi,
That's
right?
what they would call it.
Yeah, for sure.
There's always like these weird adaptations with like food that a lot of people don't understand where it came from, you know? And they
Puebla, Mexico. Sorry to interrupt. The trompo, Lebanese immigrants, right? They moved there. And then I always like, again, my LA part of me was like, oh yeah. You know, I don't know any of the history or roots of like al pastor, you know, like the meat on the spit.
like shawarma.
Yeah, like literally it was fucking Lebanese going to Pueblo, Mexico, and then they fucking adapted it in that way, you know?
And it's fucking delicious,
Yeah, dude.
It's weird when I travel to other states.
It does make you wonder though on the pastor, where you're like, did Mexican ancestors always use Tampico in the pastor marinade? Like, maybe Tampico existed in millennias. Okay.
I would find this out from like little small things, right? So I have like a shrimp cocktail recipe that I make, right? It's obviously adjusted to my taste and I like it.
Yeah.
But then there'd be some of these videos. There's like, they'll do a shrimp cocktail recipe and I would make it. I'm like, this shit sucks. It doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck is the difference?
Yeah.
And then I'll watch this grainy ass video in 240p.
Yeah.
Right? With this lady speaking.
240p, dude.
Yeah.
Fucking nerd alert. Okay.
And it's this lady just speaking in Spanish.
Yeah.
And then to somebody from God's grace, they translated her recipe to show us what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And it's just some of the jankiest shit ever. And I'm like, that's why it tastes good. It's because of that janky ass fucking condiment right there. That all these other fancy ones don't add.
Yeah.
And because they're trying to make it either like fresher or whatever. I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah. It doesn't translate sometimes.
Yeah, it doesn't translate. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like one of the biggest things that I found out,
for sure.
specifically when I went to Mexico, was that a lot of people when they were making their cocktail, their seafood cocktail, they would add fucking, you know what it is? Maggi soy sauce.
Oh yeah.
And that's like in everything that they would put in.
Wait, Maggi soy sauce or Maggi seasoning? Oh yeah.
The Maggi seasoning.
Okay.
And that was like the Worcester kick that they would have.
It's like liquid umami, basically.
And I was like,
yeah.
ain't nobody said shit about this. And I was like, that's why when I had it in Mexico, it was so fucking good. And I just saw that bottle. I was like, it was everywhere. I'm like, what is that for? Well, the tour guy said, they're like, oh, we put it in the campechana and the freak. I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. After that, saw those videos. I was like, oh, it's true. They have that shit ton of ketchup, and that's like the main flavor base. And it's fucking delicious.
Yeah, I mean,
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, for sure. It's so crazy, right? Even like Filipino ketchup, like banana ketchup.
Yeah.
I always thought that, like, like my homies who like had it at their homes, I always thought that was just the brand banana ketchup, but it was still Shirley tomato. So I didn't know that it was actually banana ketchup, because it looks like tomato ketchup, it's red, Anyways, like I literally actually just learned that like a couple years ago.
Dude, Filipino spaghetti. That's all ketchup, baby.
Yeah, for sure.
And a shit ton of sugar. And that's fucking addictive as hell.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember just going to like my friends' family parties. And
but it's still fucking better than, shout out to Thomas, because he still can eat like ravioli out of the Chef Boyardee can cold, when you cut into it and it's just a gelée. I said gelée to describe fucking, tonight we have, it was gelée. Anyways, fucking, it's still going to be better than that in the sense of like just saying like, like it's like people love Chef Boyardee, the same reason why people love things where at least those things that are like, once you know the ingredients, at least it's still good. You know what I mean?
I ain't gonna lie, man. Yeah. I love Chef Boyardee fucking rabbit cannon or rabbit because
you and Thomas will be homies.
Hey, I'll tell you this. That's just dog food.
Look, but I'll eat it.
I'll eat it. I'll eat that shit all day.
Yeah. Like Last of Us styles. Like you can you imagine like if you were doing like Last of Us styles and all of a sudden like you came across a Chef Boyardee?
Oh. Yeah. I like that shit because it was like very American. It was food that I didn't have in my house.
Yeah.
But some of my other Korean friends who were more Korean American than I was, they had microwave dinners.
Yeah.
They had Chef Boyardee.
Yeah, that was like me.
Oh, see right there. And so
it was Price Club in the, I don't know,
Price Club,
early 90s, late 80s. I can't remember. Whenever, right? But I grew up on Kirkland, like at least like my junior high school years, like I ate so many fried chicken patty sandwiches from Costco.
My God, dog. You just fucking traumatized me right now.
Posada burritos. I don't know. Did they still call them posada burritos, right? Then they came out with the chicken chimichangas and those were fire, but then you had to stop eating them because they were just like too much,
The fried chicken patties, my mom would buy that every fucking time.
Yeah.
And then she would just throw it. I couldn't even use an oven at the time, so I just microwaved that bitch.
Yeah.
And I would just eat that with whatever I could. I fucking forgot about that shit, dude. The fried chicken patties. And then it was on top of that New England clam chowder.
Yep.
from fucking not Campbell's, but a Progresso.
Yeah,
Progressive.
yeah, because before Kirkland had a bunch of Kirkland branded stuff, right? Yeah, they still had, and they still do have like partnerships with certain things, and those are always going to be staples at Kirkland. Dude, Kirkland, it's funny, right? Because like, let's say, they always make the joke like Target's like perfect for girls, like, I don't know, some transplant from Arizona, like some white blonde girl, right?
Yeah.
Kirkland, it's also a curated brand, right? Like Target is curated, right? Kirkland is a curated brand too, right? Like so the other day, like I went to go buy a bunch of shit ton of shelves because I'm trying to get my garage sorted, right? I know that the base model of the shelves are going to be of a certain quality because Costco carries it. Because you know what I'm saying? At that price point for the quality, there's always going to be that Kirkland, like a little bit better than everything else around that same cost. You know,
it's going to be good.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Those shelves, like I had one from the old like days of, like I don't know, like Little Meat days. I think that like I bought a one-off and I regret it. It was like one of those Amazon ones that were around the same price. The thing is like so dinky while the Costco shelf is like, you know what I mean?
Some real shit.
Yeah. So anyways, just going on that Costco life. It's committed to the brands, dude. And
how fucking weird. Like cities apart, Korean people still bought the same shit.
Yeah.
What the fuck is that about?
Yeah, for sure.
Like when I would talk to Ed about stuff, because he grew up in Seattle, and his parents are buying literally the same shit my parents are buying.
Yeah.
And it's very particular to Korean people.
Yeah.
Like something about that fucking Korean War that fucked everybody up.
Well, dude, Thomas, my dad. So every time I say Thomas, I'm talking about my dad. You haven't met him yet, but he's a character, dude. So this guy is a master saver, and there's never not Spam, soda, instant ramen, and Vienna sausage in an unlimited supply. When I say unlimited, of course, everything's finite.
Like a ridiculous amount.
But yeah, we're talking like it could be a whole cupboard, like a cupboard when I say like from, ground to ceiling of one of those things, right? So instant ramen, Spam, he's got a legit collection of those things. And, those are also things that if and when they expire, again, just like The Last of Us, Thomas he's not going to get sick because that Spam is good for a long fucking time, even though it's past the expiration date, That
Spam is like...
Don't do that, folks, if if some of you get, but Thomas, he comes from that era,
It's that quintessential thing that every Korean household has. They have Spam because you just fry that shit up, eat it with rice, eggs, and kimchi, and you're pretty much good.
Hawaiian food. Yeah.
It's fucking delicious. Well, guys, that's a 2-hour podcast, baby. You guys haven't had... We've been talking for 2 hours. You guys haven't had a 2-hour podcast in quite a while, but I'm going to title this one ADHD and 2 Koreans.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then also fucking first 40 minutes of Robin fucking talking stupid high, dude. I was best. Way too high.
So one high Korean, one drunk Korean.
I got to redeem myself for that first 40 minutes.
No, people love fucking randomness. That's what this podcast is about. The last podcast, I rambled on for about tomatoes for 20 minutes, and that was the most enjoyable part for them.
Word.
And I had to get it out because I wanted to tell people about tomatoes. But you guys can catch this podcast every Sundays at 12 p.m. Genius Brain.
We have a lot to talk about.
Oh, I mean, we could talk for hours. Secret Society is launching, of course, spring. We have a Secret Society Genius Brain collab coming out. It has everything to do with my love for anime and growing up. And if you guys know, there's always a backstory to every collab piece that I create. And it's going to be based off one of my favorite animes of all time. You're going to fucking love it. Once again, Genius Brain every Sunday at 12 p.m. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.